Last time we did a couple of sentences of the preface, but I'll just read the whole preface again, and then we'll see if we have anything to say about it. Okay, preface. The Quran is a book which emphasizes deed rather than idea. There are, however, men to whom it's not possible organically to assimilate an alien universe by reliving as a vital process. That special type of inner experience on which religious faith ultimately rests. There are, however, men to whom it is not possible organically to assimilate an alien universe by reliving as a vital process. That is special type of inner experience on which religious faith ultimately rests. Moreover, the modern man, by developing habits of concrete thought, habits which Islam itself fostered at least in the earlier stages of its cultural career, has rendered himself less capable of that experience which he further suspects because of its liability to illusion. The more genuine schools of Sufism have, no doubt, done good work in shaping and directing the evolution of religious experience in Islam. But their latter day representatives, owing to their ignorance of the modern mind, have become absolutely incapable of receiving any fresh inspiration from modern thought and experience. They are perpetuating methods which were created for generation possessing a cultural outlook differing in important respects from our own. Your creation and resurrection, says the Quran, are like the creation and resurrection of a single soul. Surah 31, Ayah 28. A living experience of the kind of biological unity embodied in this verse requires today a method physiologically less violent and psychologically more suitable to a concrete type of mind. In the absence of such a method, the demand for a scientific form of religious knowledge is only natural. In these lectures, which were undertaken at the request of the Madras Muslim Association and delivered at Madras, Hyderabad, and Aligarh, I have tried to meet. Actually, I shouldn't accept it. I should just read it the way we read it. In these lectures, which were undertaken at the request of the Madras Muslim Association and delivered at Madras, Hyderabad, and Aligarh, I have tried to meet, even though partially, this urgent demand by attempting to reconstruct Muslim religious philosophy with due regard to the philosophical tradition of Islam and the more recent developments in the various domains of human knowledge. And the present moment is quite favorable for such an undertaking. Classical physics has learned to criticize its own foundations. As a result of this criticism, the kind of materialism which is originally necessitated is rapidly disappearing, and the day is not far off when religion and science may discover hitherto unsuspected mutual harmonies. It must, however, be remembered that there is no such thing as finality in philosophical thinking. As knowledge advances and fresh avenues of thought are open, their views, and probably sounder views than those set forth in these lectures, are possible. Our duty is carefully to watch the progress of human thought and to maintain an independent, critical attitude towards it. Muhammad Iqbal, rahmatullah alayh. Okay, let's go through it. So the first thing he's saying is the Quran is a book which emphasizes deed rather than an idea. Last time I said that really the Quranic contrast is not between deed and idea, but between deed and ilm. So knowledge and deed, you can say amal. Idea in what do we put translate as tasawwur, but then you also use it for concept in Arabic as well. So idea, on the other hand, idea is a khayal. That's the actual translation of idea, which is not that good. But anyway, probably what he means here is Geist, because it's, as I said last time, it's very Hegelian, this whole business. So the basic contrast is between deed and knowledge, not deed and idea. And there's a long ongoing debate among Muslim scholars about knowledge and whether knowledge is required for its own sake or for its own sake, and deed to act upon. On the other hand, there are those who said that knowledge is acquired for its own sake as well as to act upon. So they are both something which is valuable in itself. And for example, if you read Shadbi's Al-Muwafaqat, there's a long debate in there. So yeah, well, that's just the point. It doesn't lead to anything as yet. The second thing he is saying is there are, however, men to whom it is not possible organically to assimilate an alien universe by reliving it as a vital process, that special type of experience on which religious faith ultimately rests. So in Hegelian philosophy, for example, that's how I would explain it. I'm sure it can be explained in many other ways. In Hegel, when we have conceptual knowledge, or more accurately perceptual experience, we treat in our ordinary experience, we treat or we presuppose, for example, in Kantian system, a dichotomy between knower and the known, and generally you talk about subject and object. So if I see something in front of me or outside my window where I'm sitting, for example, there is a fence, there are various other things. That's the object which I am as a subject experiencing, and I consider this object as something alien to me in the sense that it is outside me. And it is also alien because it is the subject, we say attribute freedom to subject. On the other hand, to object, we, at least in the classical model on which British empiricism was based, and then Kant sort of developed it, and which early modern science also carried with it. At least that's what people thought. Object is considered inert. So subject understand something which is not itself. So, and Hegel sort of criticized this model, not in the sense that he didn't rejected its use for our day-to-day life, but what he rejected was it as the final analysis of our experience of the world. So that's why he's using the word alien universe, because when subjects try to understand the universe, it sees itself, a scientific paradigm, it sees itself opposed to it, and universe is hindering its plans and desires, and through using instrumental reason it tries to form or shape this alien universe according to its own desires or according to its own plans, etc. So in that sense, a universe is alien. But what Hegel said was that this alienation is something temporary, something to be overcome. Because if we relive this experience, as a vital process, that's the word Iqbal uses there, we will come to the realization that the object which I have posited as something existing outside me and against me is actually the development of same living force. He called it Geist sometime. And earlier translators translated it as an idea. So if we go through Hegel's phenomenological experience, which he describes in his phenomenology of Geist, or in his other works. So if we relive this experience as a living, as a living and vital process, then we, and I'm not going to try to explain how, we can relive this as a vital process, and we come to realize that subject and object, myself and the universe, we are not alien to each other or opposed to each other, but we're part and parcel of the development of the same forces of life. And that's how we overcome this dichotomy, when we see that the universe and ourselves are part of something which contain us, and it is developing, and it is showing itself in a different. So alienation is just a partial way of looking at the universe, but we can relive that experience in a different way, in which the object would not be an alien object, or there won't be a subject and object opposing each other, but subject and object would be seen as part and parcel of the same living process. And why is Iqbal mentioning this? He's mentioning this because he's saying that religious experience assumes that's what religious experience does, is it relives our day-to-day experience in a different mode, not in objectifying mode, as a vital process, where it tries to understand the relationship between us as finite human beings and the forces in the universe. So it basically tries to understand the unity, what relates me as a finite self to the universe and to other forces acting in the universe. So obviously it's very hard to accept that this is what religious experience is. Like, for example, if you read Imam Rabbani's Maktubat, for example, that's what it is. But anyway, that's what Iqbal is saying. It's a religious experience for him is like a Hegelian reliving, or reliving of our ordinary experience as vital process through which we discover the unity of life, basically, and see it as a ongoing developing process. And but Iqbal is saying this for most people is hard. Men to whom it is not possible. So most people are locked in day-to-day experience. So that's why for most people it's hard to understand the religious experience to start with. That's his point, I think. But this difficulty is magnified or multiplied because modern man has become suspicious of all speculative, grand, supernatural experiences, even if they are at heart really vital, lived, concrete experiences. And that man has become suspicious of that. That's because of the science. Because science propagate concrete way of thinking. And on the face of it, science, for Iqbal mistakenly think that religious experience is non-concrete, abstract, speculative. For Iqbal, on the other hand, that's not true, and that's one of the things he would like to, persuade modern man to. So modern man has become incapable of religious experience or appreciating religious experience for two reasons. One is they are by their very nature, or most of men, are incapable of Hegelian analysis, I guess. But more important reason also is that science thinks that religious experience is supernatural, and it has expunged it from its own analysis. So basically, one of the things Iqbal would try to do is how, if he could re-establish the credibility of religious experience by showing that really there's nothing supernatural about or unscientific about religious experience. So that's the one way. So, and he will make use of, among other things, psychology, some investigation in psychology. On the other hand, he would try to persuade the religious people, or the people who deal with religious experiences, specifically Sufis, and by religious experience he means the experience of the sort which prophets have in the form of revelation, and also Sufis, those people who in the form of non-binding revelation, like which we call ilham. And basically he will try to show that they are at heart very concrete scientific processes. Science can understand those processes, and he will try to persuade the religious people, or as he called them, Sufis here, to adopt scientific techniques to understand and explain their own experiences. So that's a two-way thing that he is trying to do here. Okay, and that's why he criticized Sufis. Like, as you know, Sufis have done a great work in India, a work of social engineering, where they presented Islam Orthodox Islam, like Muinuddin Chishti or Nizamuddin Awliya or Baba Farid Shakarganj, or before that Ali Hijweri. They had presented Islam in an idiom and language, through which Islam became natural for the Indian environment. And obviously, when you're doing these things, there's always people make a lot of mistakes. But this is the ijtihad, and through that, India basically, large swathes of India became Muslims. And what Iqbal is saying is that process has, and that process was two-pronged in the sense that they understood Indian philosophies and especially their practices and their rituals and their traditions, and then they presented Islamic traditions in a way which they were understandable to that population. So obviously they didn't take those practices. That's why you are talking about social engineering here. There's always a process of give and take, and there's always also the process of cleaning or process of reconstruction. So it is compatible with Islam, and that has been a great success in India. And I think there's a lot of Iqbal's criticism of Sufis in his poetry and here as well is sort of because he knows that at his heart the great prospect, the potential of that sort of work which Sufi traditions in India possess. That's why he's disappointed, and that disappointment results in a lot of criticism, sometimes harsh criticism. But the Sufism in India there are two things happen. Most of the Sufi schools had been basically bought by imperialism through giving them lands and all those things. So there's nothing to be expected of them. But then there were those Orthodox school or the remnants. What they did was they shut themselves off the modern condition and knowledge, and they used what they had to keep the Islamic traditions alive in India. So what Iqbal is saying is that they should go back to that, their great tradition, and now they should do what they had done in India, and they should learn modern knowledge, especially science, and especially psychology and all those things, and do the same social engineering vis-a-vis the modern sciences and present Islam in a new idiom and the way which it becomes more persuasive or understandable for modern mind. And since that's not happening, he is, but their latter day representative, owing to their ignorance of modern man, have become absolutely incapable of receiving any fresh inspiration from modern thought and experience. And by inspiration, he means, when you understand modern science, then inspiration means you go back and see your own tradition in a new light and present them in a new light. And you critique modern knowledge by that, but also make it more persuasive to the modern mind. So it's a two-edged thing, because without critique you will actually assimilate yourself and you won't be there anymore to do anything. So that's the basic vision which he has here. And this work is the work Iqbal is suggesting here. It's not an easy work because it's a work requires deep knowledge and deep instincts, deep social engineering instincts. Um, and you need for that deep knowledge of Islam and deep knowledge of the modern sciences. Something, and then you interpret Islam according to that without compromising its core. So that's a very hard task, and something people like Ghazali or Imam al-Haramain Juwayni or Ibn Taymiyyah or other Shatibi and or Shah Waliullah, people did. So he's asking people to do the same. And it's obviously not an easy work. And for Iqbal himself, although he knows a lot of his own tradition, like especially poetry and all those things, and he obviously knows the West, especially philosophy and law, which is his specialization. But he's no religious scholar in that sense, and so he's basically asking people who possess that knowledge. So that's why he always, kept in contact with Indian scholars, and even wrote to the Sheikh al Azhar at the time, etc. And yeah, so but it's very difficult task. It's not an easy task. So they are perpetuating methods which work for generations. Culture are differing in important respect from our own. So obviously, for preservation, when alien civilization comes and overwhelms you, so then your natural instinct is preservation. But preservation, and that's what happened to us in India, at least. Subcontinent. That those people. If we ignore those people who basically were bought by the British, our scholarly traditions went into preservation mode, so they shut themselves in, so that they are not influenced by or they are not concerned by what is outside, because they have no control over that, and they try to preserve what they had in their own traditions of knowledge and practice. And obviously that's a natural and important aspect. We should never think that it is something to be scoffed at, but you can't you can't through preservation mode you can't perpetuate a living civilization. So you have to deal with what is outside, and that's what he is asking. But it's very hard task, and it's just your he quotes Quran. Your creation and resurrection, says the Quran, are like the your creation and resurrection, says the Quran, are like creation and resurrection of a single soul. So basically, he is trying to establish the unity of life here. That will go back to what he was saying at the start. But this ayah, actually, you can establish unity of life through many other verses in Quran, but this verse actually doesn't say what he's trying to claim, because if you look at the context, what he's saying, مَا خَلْقُكُمْ, so the ayah is وَمَا خَلَقْنَاكُمْ وَمَا خَلْقُكُمْ وَلَا بَعْثُكُمْ إِلَّا كَنَفْسٍ وَاحِدَةٍ إِنَّ اللَّهَ سَمِيعٌ بَصِيرٌ. I think that's the ayah. And what Quran is saying is that مَا خَلْقُكُمْ أَيُّهَا النَّاسُ وَلَا بَعْثُكُمْ يَوْمَ الْقِيَامَةِ إِلَّا كَخَلْقِ نَفْسٍ وَاحِدَةٍ وَبَعْثِهَا. So basically, the God is actually God is saying that for him it is very easy to resurrect people. It's just like resurrecting one. Resurrection, creation and resurrection of the whole humanity is for him like a creation and resurrection of oneself. So this ayah in itself doesn't say that human beings are a unity, or biological unity, or physiological or psychological unity. It just actually says that God is all powerful. So this is actually an argument for the possibility of resurrection rather than. But so that shows that it's not an easy task. A living experience, the kind of biological unity embodied in this verse, requires today a method physiologically less violent and psychologically more suitable to a concrete type of man. And basically, as I said, what he's saying is you need a scientific explanation and understanding of religious experience. And concrete type of mind, he means science, really. And as we see, it's just a lot of confusion here to think that science is anything concrete. So Iqbal's idea is that modern human beings, through scientific revolution, has developed a concrete mind, and through that concrete mindset, they have become suspicious of anything abstract. So that's why he want us to explain religious experience in concrete scientific terms. And it will be important here to understand what scientific knowledge is really, because without that, science is very important, not as a form of knowledge, but as a justification and ideology of modern civilization. So Iqbal raised this question, and that's where his greatness lies, not in the answer or his understanding, because as we'll see, it's flawed in many ways. So what he is asking us is to reconstruct religious philosophy, and by that he means religious Sufism and Kalam in general, by drawing on philosophy of Islam itself and recent development, as I said. So we need to understand the modern mind so we can understand our own tradition better, and also to understand the modern world better by critiquing its negative aspects and taking its positive aspects, and also by being able to present that thing in the light of the light of modern knowledge and in modern terms. And it is, in a sense, it is in line with what Quran says, because Quran says that sanurihim ayatina, so we will show them our ayatina, signs. Fil afaqi, outside them in cosmos, and wafi anfusihim, and in their own self, that is from within. Hatta yatabayyana lahum annahu al-haqqu min rabbihim, so that until it becomes clear that what Quran is come with is the truth from your Lord. And this verse, this ayah has many, can be interpreted in many different senses, but one legitimate way of understanding it is to say that with the passage of time, some of the Quranic verses which will become more, their truth will become more obvious because of the advances in cosmic knowledge and advances in inner knowledge, or what we may call psychological knowledge. And what Iqbal is saying is to take this task seriously of, and as a reason for that, or as a proof of that, says that see how classical physics, which starts as a very materialistic, is now, with the advent of quantum physics, giving way to a worldview which is more, at least amenable to spiritual and religious worldview, as compared to what it was in 17th, 18th century, where it was very hardcore materialism. Now, whether his hope in quantum physics was justified or not, that's another question. But that's the way to go, he said. But his greatness lies in that he knows that what he's saying is kind of no finality, in the sense that in philosophy there is no finality. So what he's saying is just giving us pointers. So what we need to do is to keep this work, and that's why. And that work, he sort of summarizes, and that work, that task, he sort of summarizes in the last sentence. And I think that last sentence is why, this preface is important, among other things. And that's where he says, our duty is carefully to watch the progress of human thought and to maintain an independent, critical attitude towards it. So, progress of human mind, human knowledge. As a Muslim, it is our duty to always and keep ourselves, not shut ourselves in and doesn't deal with it, but try to understand it, try to learn it, but independently and critically. Independently, within an independent mind, to try to understand it, and then critically evaluate it. So see what is positive, what is negative, leave out the negative, get the positive, develop it, and then try to understand your own tradition according to it, and try to develop it, and then try to present it in a way that people around you can understand it. Because what else, what else our task is as Muslims but to be witness to the truth. So I think this the most important thing to deal with the modern knowledge, modern society, modern or the world around us, to deal with it and not to shut ourselves out. But independently and critically. And the thing is, people have actually, what have happened is we have rather two groups generally. One who have, basically they said we are not going to deal with it. Just this is not ours. So they have shut themselves out. But those who have dealt with it, they haven't dealt with it with the independent mind or critical mind. I think there's nothing more we need today, or we needed yesterday, or we need in future, than these two qualities: independence of mind and critical attitude. And by critical attitude, we mean that assess everything independently and assess everything according to its own merit, rather than succumbing to the what is dominant at the moment, and succumbing to the wind of the time. So that's the task, and that's the Iqbal's reconstruction of religious thought. I mean, it's manifesto, so to speak. Hopefully next time we'll start with chapter 1.